Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. It is me, Allie. Today I will be sharing with you my labor and delivery story for the birth of our baby girl, Ellie Autumn Sau Wing. If you guys are new here, I just had a baby on the 7th of December. It is our baby number 2. We have a boy at home who is 2.5 years old, and now we have a baby girl. Again, her name is Ellie Autumn Sau Wing, and she is just an absolute blessing. We just put her down in her bassinet for a nap. We decided pretty early on that we're going to try to do at least one bassinet nap a day from when we took her home from the hospital, even just for exposure. And sometimes she's really good at it and will give us like 45 minutes to an hour, and other times she will give us 4 to 5 minutes. So with that being said, I'm semi on a time crunch. I'm just going to start right into this story, and we're going to start on December 6th. So December 6th was my 40-week appointment, and I went to go see my midwife that day. Now let me tell you, how many people tell you for your second child you never go past your due date? You always go early with your second baby. Not true. With our son, I was an entire 7 days late, a full week late. So when I hit that 40-week mark, I was like, it is happening again. I am going to be late again. And I was hoping that I wasn't going to be 7 days late. I was hoping like a day or two, because the last month of pregnancy is just so ridiculously uncomfortable. It is so tough emotionally, physically, mentally, and I will be the first one to tell you that with this pregnancy, the second time around, I had a great pregnancy. I had like the best pregnancy I could ever have envisioned. I felt amazing. I was working out, I was eating healthy, I was like active. I just felt really good. And then that last month hit, and it was like, I was so uncomfortable. I wasn't sleeping at all. I was getting very like emotional and all the hormones. It was just, it's a tough month, a very tough month. But then you go to your 40-week appointment and you still don't have the baby, and you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna be late again. So when I went to my midwife appointment, I kind of sat down with her and I was like, I'm gonna be late again. Like, I'm definitely not having the baby today. I'm gonna be late. Like, what are my options? So my midwife sat me down and she said, well, we have 3 options. Can we go over today? So the first one is just let it happen. Like, whenever it happens, it happens. You can go up to 2 weeks late. And I was like, girl, I am not going 2 weeks late. Absolutely not. She said that is like the most high risk, because that is when you have the most complications if they allow you to go 2 weeks late. So I kind of was like, nope, don't want that option at all. What are my next options? The second option was to have an induction date. So if I didn't have the baby by that Sunday, my appointment was on Monday, so pretty much an entire week. If I didn't have the baby by then, I would have an induction date and I would be induced. So I was like, okay, I'm super uncomfortable. Like, I don't feel good at all. I will do that if you think that's the safest, but I kind of like just want to have this baby at this point. So she was like, all right, here's your third option. We can scrape your membranes. Now, if you're not familiar with what having your membranes scraped is, I am not the person to educate you on it, because gynecological talk, vocabulary and terms, it is just like a whole different world for me. You can look it up, or you can talk to your midwife or your OBGYN, but basically they check to see how much you're dilated. Don't quote me on this. And as they're checking to see how much you're like dilated and how like your cervix is, they scrape the insides of you, and it is supposed to like speed the process up a little bit. So I was like, let's do that. I did that with my son Landon and I had great success. So I was like, let's scrape these membranes, like scrape them all, let's do this. So she scraped my membranes, and then she was like, you're gonna probably feel some like mild cramping, some discomfort from this. You might spot a little bit and see a little bit of blood. If you want to wear a pad, like that's fine. If it starts getting like mucousy, that might be like your mucus plug or your bloody show, as they call it, and that's when you want to like call us if you're starting to feel contractions, or you notice that like your blood is kind of like mucousy if you are urinating, or if you're wearing a pad. I know that this is a lot, but you're here for the birth story and that's all part of it, so there's no such thing as TMI in this video. We're just gonna be talking about it all. So I was like, okay, I had my membrane scraped before, I know like the cramping, and I've had contractions before with my son. I know the difference between the two. Let's have this baby. So here is kind of like the part where I know some people are not into fate, but I am very much into fate. like very, very much into fate. And I was looking at this midwife. So you have an option of seeing OBGYNs or seeing midwives. I saw the midwives both times. I've had nothing but positive experiences with the midwives. So if you go to the midwives, I can't talk about everybody's experience, but my experience in the facility that I go to, if you see the midwives, there are like 8 to 10 of them in the practice, and you just see them on rotate. So you see them throughout your entire 40 weeks or more, if you're in my case, and by the end, you'll know all the midwives, and one of those midwives will be there to deliver your child. So when you are in labor and delivery, there's a familiar face for you. So I saw a bunch of the midwives like 3, 4, 5 times. The midwife that I saw that day, it was the first time that I saw her throughout this entire pregnancy. I kept looking at her and I was like, you look so familiar. Like, you look so familiar. I didn't see you this time at all. I didn't see you the first time in my pregnancy. Like, how do I know you? So I'm staring at her, and at the end I was like, because she was young. I'm 34, she looked to be just about my age, maybe like even younger or slightly just a little bit older, but she was not older. Most of the midwives are like a little bit older. She was young. So I kept looking at her and I was like, I just have to ask you, were you in practice like 3 years ago? And she was like, oh, I was doing my internship 3 years ago. I was like, I'm almost positive you delivered my son Landon. And she looked at me and she was like, I did. I delivered your son Landon. And I was like, look, I'm starting to cry right now. I'm like so emotional. It just like hit me so hard. I was like, this is fate. I have not seen you once this entire 40-week span, and I see you the day that I'm feeling like I'm gonna have a baby, and you delivered my son. And she was like, well, we just scraped your membranes and I'm working all day today and all day tomorrow. I'm on call at the hospital, so let's have this baby. Let's make it 2 babies in a row. She was amazing. Like, when I had my son Landon, I'm crying right now. I'm so emotional. When I had my son Landon, I had the best experience with the midwife and with the nurses and with the entire staff at Women and Infants Hospital in Providence. But she particularly just made me feel so comfortable with Landon. I was in delivery, I was in labor for 13 hours, and she was just amazing. We talked about Disney, we talked about pit bulls. She was just the best. So I saw her and I was like, this is weird. Like, I got goosebumps. I saw her, she scraped my membranes. I called my husband right when I left and I was like, we're having this baby today. Like, you know, we're having this baby today. He's like, what do you mean? Did they say to go to the hospital? And I'm like, no, but we're having this baby today, if not tomorrow. And I told him about the midwife and he was like, there's no possible way. Like, how does that happen? So that's my little midwife story. Now let's just get back into December 6th. So December 6th, I went home. I kind of went about my day. We got Landon from childcare. We brought him home. We had a really fun night at home. And I started feeling like a little like I said, I've had contractions before, but I didn't consider these to be contractions. It was just kind of like mild cramping. Like, it would come and it would go, but it wasn't to the intensity that a contraction would be. So we kind of like went about our day, did our nighttime routine with Landon, put him to sleep, and then we jumped into bed. And I think, yeah, it was Monday. It was Monday and Holiday Baking Championship was on, and I love that show. Oh man, I think she's starting to wake up. Let's see if we can get her going back down. Holiday Baking Championship was on, and I love that show. It comes on at like 8 to 9 or 9 to 10. So we ended up watching that episode, and then we both went to sleep. So I think I was sleeping around like 10:30 at the latest. I slept, oh man, Ellie baby. I'm just getting into the good part about you. I might run down and just go put the binky in her mouth and see if that kind of like settles her. Give me like 2 minutes and we'll get back into the story, hopefully. If not, if I'm in like a completely different outfit, the nap didn't work. Oh wait, my husband's putting it in right now. I can watch him on the monitor. Okay, let's just keep it going. He just gave her the binky. All right, so 10:30, I was sleeping. I slept really well. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, I started getting like cramps. Not like mild cramps, but like cramps. But again, not to the intensity of like a contraction. So I kind of just like let it go. I didn't wake my husband up yet. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna try to close my eyes again. The midwife said I was gonna probably get some contractions, no big deal. 4 o'clock rolls around, the cramps actually woke me up this time. And I was like, all right, these are a little bit more intense than like mild cramps, but it's still not to that intensity of the contractions that I had when I had Landon. So I was like, let's wait it out a little bit. I'm not gonna go back to sleep. I'll kind of play on my phone for a little bit and I'll just like ride this next hour out and I'll see where I am. Around 4:30, I couldn't even ride the hour out. A half hour and I was like, something's happening. Like, something's happening. So I ended up calling my midwife and I was like, I don't think I'm having contractions, but I'm definitely uncomfortable. I'm starting to like feel them every 3 minutes. They're coming and they're going. And she was like, all right, if they don't feel as intense, she's like, did your water break, any of that stuff? I said, no, none of that happened yet, but I feel like they're getting stronger and stronger. So she was like, I think that you should probably come in with the next half hour if it continues. So I monitor it until 5 o'clock in the morning. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, I started feeling contractions. Like they weren't mild cramps anymore. So I looked at my husband, I was like, we gotta do this. We need to go to the hospital right now, which is not as easy to just go to the hospital when you have a toddler at home. So I called my mom and I was like, you need to meet us at the hospital. It's happening. Like, I'm having this baby. So my mom ended up meeting us at the hospital. We dropped Landon off. I walked into the hospital and I was feeling awful. Awful at this point. It was 6:12. Now keep that in mind, 6:12. And this is the only thing that I have negative to talk about this entire experience. This part bothers me so much. We are almost in 2022. 2022. I don't understand how check-in is not just something that you do online anymore. Why can't you just do like an online check-in when you're going in to have a baby? I had to sit at the the secretary's desk for a solid 10 to 15 minutes, and my contractions were coming, and they were coming on stronger and stronger, and they're asking me all these questions and I couldn't even breathe, and I was like, why am I doing this right now? Like, I think a baby is like sliding out of me right now. How have we not figured out the check-in situation yet? Check-in was so brutal. I just kept getting contractions. They're asking me for insurance cards, and they're asking me for my license, they're asking me this, they're asking me that, they're asking me to sign things. And I kept having to like get up and walk around and like hold my stomach and my back. And at one point I was like, are they gonna say like just go into triage, go have this baby? No, I had to do the whole check-in thing. So finally all of check-in was done, and the nurse is like, I need to take you back here first to triage. Your husband can't come, we have to like talk to you first. And I don't know about all hospitals, but the hospital that I delivered with Landon and with baby Ellie, they basically take the mother in the back first and they talk with you for like 5 to 10 minutes. As they are talking with you, they're like checking all your vitals. They're not just like sitting there talking, they're like checking everything. They're checking the baby's heart rate. They're like hooking you up to all the machines, but they're just basically asking like if you feel safe at home, if you feel like you're bringing the baby into a safe environment. And thank goodness, like I'm in a very happy, healthy marriage, in a very happy, healthy household. So after I answered those questions, my husband was able to come right back into the back with me. My camera shut off right as we were getting to the good part. I don't even know where I last left off, but my husband came in the back to the triage room, and this is where they started talking about my options. So basically, once you turn like 38 weeks and you go to your appointments weekly, they start talking to you about your birth plan. Like, what do you want your birth plan to look like? What do you want your labor and delivery experience to look like? And every single time I was like, I want the epidural. I had the epidural with my son Landon. Love it. 10 out of 10 would recommend. I want the epidural. So they wrote that all down. They were also asking about like how I plan on feeding the baby, this and that, the whole entire 9 yards. But I specifically said, I want the epidural. Like, I want the epidural. And they were very, very like supportive of that. So I'm in the triage room right now. They're checking all of my vitals. They're checking all the baby's vitals. And the midwife walks in and she's like, I'm gonna like start to check your cervix to see how far along you are. The day before on the 6th, I was 3 centimeters dilated. Well, they checked me. I think it was like 6:30 maybe in the morning at this point, and I had progressed to 7 centimeters. And here's the fun part. When they checked my cervix, they broke my water accidentally. I never felt water breaking before. My water broke when I was giving birth to Landon, but I had the epidural and I didn't feel anything. I remember with Landon, they like pulled the sheet over and they're like, oh, your water broke. And I was like, oh, okay, didn't feel anything, didn't realize it. I felt it this time. And it's not painful, it is just a wild experience. You literally feel like a waterfall is coming out of you, and it goes on for like a minute to 2 minutes, which does not sound like a very long time, but when water is just gushing out of your body for like 60 seconds to 120 seconds or more, it is a wild experience. I kept looking at the nurses and the midwives and I was like, it's still coming out. Like, there's stuff still coming out of me. Is that okay? Like, is that normal? They're like, yeah, your water is breaking. So then she checked me and she was like, you're 10 centimeters dilated. And she was so nice about it. These midwives, I love the midwives. She was so respectful about it and she was so nice about it. And she just like talked to me in such a calm, kind way, kind of like the way I would talk to my son or the way that I talk to my students. It was just so calming. And she just looked at me and she was like, I'm really sorry, Allison, but you're past the epidural stage. Like, you're not gonna be able to have an epidural. You're gonna have to do this naturally. I know you're in a lot of pain right now, but the relief will come when you push this baby out. Like, I'm really, really sorry. And I just started crying because the pain was so wild at this point. Like, I felt contractions with Landon for a little bit, but then I got the epidural. And then once I got the epidural, I didn't feel anything. I felt it so strongly this time. Like, so strongly. And I was like, how am I gonna do this? Like, how in the world am I gonna do this? Poor baby Ellie. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go see if I can get her to go back down. If not, we'll finish the story at a later time. I apologize, it's kind of a little chaotic, but my baby's not even 2 weeks old yet, and that's newborn life. Okay, slight change of scenery. We have baby Ellie here. As you guys know, we don't really put her on social media, so I won't really share her in this video. We did put up a picture of her on our Instagram. It was kind of like the birth announcement, but besides that, we don't really share her on social media, especially on YouTube. And I just want to thank everybody who like respects that. I know some people don't really understand it, but for the most part, everybody's like really, really respectful about it. So let's get back into the story. She is snoozing. Let's get back into the story. She was so nice about it, but all that was going through my head was, I'm gonna die. Like, this is so uncomfortable. It was so painful. If you've ever had a natural birth, you're a hero. I was just in so much pain, and the midwife was like, this baby is coming soon. You're gonna get all the relief that you want once you push this baby out. So I was kind of like just trying to listen to her and like accept it, but at the same time, the pain that you feel is unbefreaking-believable. I'm not going to like sugarcoat it. It sucks. It's really, really rough. So I kind of just went off of the notion that I gotta do this, like, gotta get this baby out, can't get the epidural. They're being so kind about it, and I have to roll with it. So at this point, I was still in the triage room, and everything was progressing really, really fast for me. So the nurses and the midwives kept calling like, code stork, code stork. I had no idea what that meant. I kept hearing it, but I thought it was just like nurse talk and midwife talk. And my husband's sister actually is a triage nurse, so he knows kind of like all the lingo. And after the fact, he told me, he was like, you know what code stork means? And I'm like, I have no freaking idea. And he was like, that means that you're gonna have the baby in the emergency room. It means that you don't have time to get from the triage room to your labor and delivery room, and it means like they're calling for all the help because this baby is coming and you're having the baby in the emergency room. So now I'm just like, you would think I'd be like crying at this point, but I wasn't even emotional in the fact that like I might not even get to labor and delivery room because the contractions were just so extreme and so painful. That was all that was on my mind. And again, TMI, even though kind of like nothing is off limits in this video, my midwife was like, when you feel an intense urge to poop, you have to let us know. That's like the big contraction, and that's when you really need to push. So I started feeling it, and I remember just like crying from the pain and being like, I feel like I have to poop, I feel like I'm gonna poop, I think I'm gonna die, I want the epidural, I want the epidural. And my husband was like, he is like a birth coach. Like, honestly, I wish I could like rent him out because he is so good in a stressful situation. He just kept holding my hand and like rubbing my head, and he's like, babe, you can do this, like you got this, like you can do it, it's all good, like you're gonna do great, you're doing great, like just push. And he was giving me like the 1, 2, 3s and the take 3 breaths and do all of this stuff. And I'm still in the triage room, so I am pushing and I am pushing, and they get a phone call and they're like, we have a room for her, can she make it up here? So the midwife looks at me and she was like, we have a room, it's ready, we need to get you from the triage room up to the room, but that means we have to go into the elevator. She's like, can you hold off on having this baby for at least like 3 minutes? I don't want to have to deliver a baby in an elevator. She's like, if I have to, we will, but I'd rather not deliver a baby in an elevator. I was like, I don't want to have my baby in an elevator. Don't make me have my baby in an elevator. So I was like, I could do it. I could hold off. So they're like pushing me, and it was like a scene out of Grey's Anatomy. It was like a scene out of like a movie. We have like everybody, they're grabbing me, they're pulling my vitals. I had nurses holding like the, what is it called? Like the IVs. I had midwives pushing me. I had people touching all of like the buttons to open up the elevators. Everybody's running, they're pushing me. My husband's behind me. It was intense. Like, it was insane. So I was able to go into the elevator and make it to my labor delivery room. I got to my labor and delivery room, and I was just crying. I was just like, I seriously can't do this. Like, I need the epidural. And I just kept screaming. I was like, babe, like, I need the epidural. Like, I can't do this. He's like, you can do it. You can do it. You got this. Like, you got this, babe. You're doing a great job. So I ended up pushing like 3 times and up came Ellie. I had a little baby girl. So just for like reference, we don't find out the gender. We didn't find out the gender with our son Landon, and we didn't find out the gender with little baby Ellie. So my biggest thing with birth is skin to skin. I look forward to it from the day that I find out that I'm pregnant, both with Landon and with Ellie. That's all I want. It is my big like push present, if you will. I just want that baby on me, and I just want both of us naked doing skin to skin. So the baby came out, I pushed the baby out, and I'll get more into that in just a second, because I didn't have the epidural, and as painful as it was actually kind of a blessing in disguise, and I actually wouldn't have changed it for anything, as weird as that sounds. Number one, I got to feel Ellie actually like coming out of my body, and I didn't feel that with Landon at all, but I was able to feel her actually like coming out of my body and like entering the world from my body, and that is a feeling that I will never get ever again for the rest of my life. It is a feeling of just like, wow, like there was a baby in there, I pushed the baby out, and now the baby is here. The second thing, now I know like this is like completely like situational and everybody's experience is different, but with Landon, I had epidural and I was in labor for 13 hours. 13 hours. I pushed for 2 hours, but I was in labor for 13 hours. Those 2 hours that I pushed, I'm wondering if I wouldn't have been in labor for 2 hours, like not labor, I wouldn't have pushed for 2 hours. Sorry, my brain is like actual scrambled eggs right now. I'm probably just like all over the place, but I'm wondering if I would have had Landon sooner rather than 2 hours if I didn't have the epidural, because with the epidural, you don't feel it. They just say push, you give it all, and you think you're pushing as hard as you can, but maybe you're not pushing as hard as you really could if you were feeling all of the pain. I remember with Landon, like I would push and his head would come out and then it would go back in, the head would come out, it would go back in, and it went like that for like hours, actual hours. It took 2 hours. With Ellie, I know it was the second time around and things progressed a lot faster, but because I felt the pain, I was like, I am getting this baby out of me. Like I am pushing like I have never pushed in my entire life. So I remember just like, basically what they told me was like, take a deep breath, hold it in, and then push like you've never pushed before. So I would be like, and I would scream, and I did like 3 or 4 of those. Out came Ellie. So I don't know, I mean, I wouldn't change it. I'm so happy with how everything worked out, pain or no pain. Hi, editing Allison here. I forgot to talk about the most important part of this birth story, my favorite part of this birth story, finding out the gender. Like I mentioned, we don't find out the gender. We didn't find out the gender for either of our kids. So after I pushed Ellie out, they put her immediately onto my chest for skin to skin. And I just remember being like, what did we have? Did we have a boy or did we have a girl? And the nurses and the midwives were like, oh, you guys don't find out? You guys don't know? And we're like, no. So they took her and they like rolled her over a little bit. And then my husband was like, we had a girl. It's a girl, like we had a girl. And I just sobbed so much. Instant serotonin, the feeling that flooded through my body is unmatched. I remember just looking at her and kissing her and being like, I love you, Ellie, I love you, babe, we have a boy, we have a girl, like we have one of each, like we have a girl. And I just was sobbing hysterically in like the most beautiful way. I'm not here to tell any pregnant woman what to do, but if you're even like considering not finding out the gender, I 1,000,000% support that. I think it is the best surprise in the entire world. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. I still get goosebumps to this day, replaying back in my head when my husband was like, it's a boy, when we had Landon, and that was over 2.5 years ago. And now I can just relive that exact same experience with Ellie. So we ended up having a girl. They flipped her over and Adam was like, it's a girl, we have a girl, we have like a little Ellie. And I can't believe I forgot to talk about that in this video, but that is a huge component of this story. So let's get back to the actual video, editing Allison out. Also, the recovery was incredible. Incredible with doing it natural versus having an epidural. My recovery with Landon was just wow. I did a whole birth story on Landon and how tough that whole entire labor and delivery was and the recovery, and I'll link that in the description below, not to make this video like 15 minutes long. But the recovery was amazing. Like a half hour after having Ellie, they were like, all right, we're gonna try to get you to go to the bathroom, because I was like, I really have to go to the bathroom now. So they like stood me up and they held on to me and they like take a couple of steps. So I took a couple of steps and they're like, oh, she's doing really well with this. So they kind of like took their arms off of me and let me walk to the bathroom, but they were right there in case I like collapsed or anything. I walked right to the bathroom, went to the bathroom, came back out, walked back to the bed, got in the bed myself, put the blankets back on me, took Ellie back, and they're like, all right, are you gonna like go run a half marathon now? I was like, I don't know, I just feel so good right now. Like I feel like so euphoric right now after having this baby. Like it was amazing. So as tough as it was, I'm really happy that I wasn't able to get the epidural. I was really, really happy that I was able to feel everything and I was able to recover as good as I did. With Landon, my biggest thing was I hemorrhaged like super, super bad, and the recovery was terrible. This time around, again, I know this is like out of my control, but I didn't hemorrhage, I didn't tear, I didn't need stitches. I had a baby. It was like, I don't know, it was a blessing. Like everything about that whole entire stay was just an absolute blessing. So not exactly how I expected it to go, but kind of better than I expected. It was rough, but it was beautiful. Like it really was beautiful. Another thing that I wanted to mention, I did talk about this a bunch on my Instagram about how we're formula feeding this time around. I breastfed Landon for 10 months, when in reality I probably should have done it for 10 days or 10 hours, because breastfeeding was just, it was a huge source of PPD for me and PPA, and I was just so stubborn and I just like wouldn't allow myself to give it up, and I really should have, because it was just an emotional roller coaster, like a roller coaster that just like for me. So I decided early on this time that I was just going to formula feed, and I heard from like so many people that like the nurses, especially midwives, because midwives are just like very like natural. I had the best experience with midwives, but I just heard from like a lot of people that midwives really prefer like the natural way. Like if given the choice between epidural or natural birth, they would probably encourage you to do a natural birth. If given the choice between formula or breastfeeding, they would probably encourage you to do breastfeeding more. I didn't have that experience. So I remember at like my 39-week appointment, I was talking to my midwife and I started tearing up because I just get nervous. Like you don't want to be judged and you don't want this and you don't want that. Like I had it in my mind that this is what we're gonna do. It's gonna be best for my mental clarity. It's gonna be best for my family. We're in a really good place with our family right now, and I just want to formula feed. I feel like it's gonna alleviate a lot of the stress and a lot of the overwhelming feelings that you can get in those first like couple of weeks, your 4th trimester. But like I want to tell them, because I don't want to tell them at the hospital. You don't know how you're gonna feel after the hospital, and I want them to know early. So I remember being at my 39-week appointment, and I looked at my midwife and I just started tearing up. She's like, are you okay? And I was like, yes, but I just wanted to tell you that we decided that we're going to formula feed from the start. I know like originally I said that I was going to try out breastfeeding, and if it works I will do it, and if not we're going to formula feed. I was like, we decided we're just doing formula feeding from the start. And she looked at me, she was like, that's great. And I was like taken back by that. I was like, okay. I was like, okay, yeah, that is great. She's like, yeah. She goes, are you gonna feed your baby? I was like, yeah. She goes, then that's great, that's awesome. She was so respectful about it, and she's like, here, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna write in your chart right now. She goes, so you don't have to explain yourself at the hospital. When you go to the hospital or to be in there, they won't even ask you about breastfeeding. They'll just automatically bring you formula. And I just cried, and I was like, thank you, like, thank you. Thank you. Because that was one of my biggest, like, I don't care, people can judge me all they want and you can feel however you want to feel. I personally think fed is best. I know a lot of people think breast is best. I just think fed is best, and if you want to judge me, feel free. Honestly, I couldn't care less, because I'm happier now than I've ever been. It was such a good, such a good decision. However, when you just give birth, you're very, very vulnerable, and the last thing that I wanted at that point was to give birth and then tell the doctors and the nurses and the midwives like, oh, we're gonna formula feed, and then kind of like give me a little flack about it. Didn't happen this time. So I was just honest about it from the beginning, and they were so respectful, which just really, really helped me out a lot. So that's pretty much my birth labor and delivery story. It was a blessing. We ended up having to stay in the hospital for 2 days. That's another thing with having like a COVID baby, like a baby during like the COVID baby boom. They are trying to get people in and out as fast as they can. And I remember them being like, hey, you can leave tomorrow. Mind you, this crazy thing that happened, I cannot stop thinking about this. I talked about this on my Instagram, but she was born on 12/7 at 7/12, and she weighed 7 pounds 12 ounces. What are the odds? We actually played those numbers that night and didn't win a penny, but so cool. I really just wanted that lottery like ticket just to like put in her like birth book, because how cool is that? December 7th at 7/12, weighing 7 pounds 12 ounces. Mind blown, like blown. So with having like a baby during COVID, you are definitely kind of like pushed out as fast as you want it to be, not as fast as they want it to be. They give you the option. You can stay if you do like a vaginal birth and everything is going well, you can stay for 2 days. But if you want to leave a day in, you can, which was insane to me. Like, considering this is our second baby, we probably would have left the first day if she didn't have jaundice. I'll talk about that in a second. But like, as a first-time mother, if you're in there and they're like, yeah, you can leave in a day, I would be like, no, I want to stay for a month. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you need to help me. So we had the option of leaving like a day later. However, little Miss Ellie here, little Miss Ellie Autumn, had high risk jaundice. Now, I didn't understand this and I didn't realize this, but if you have a baby that has like an Asian background, if you guys didn't know, my husband is 100% Chinese, you are more at risk to have jaundice. Our son did have jaundice and he had to go under light therapy for like an hour, 2 hours. It wasn't too bad. It corrected himself and we didn't have to stay after. She had really bad jaundice. She was like high risk and her levels kept rising to the point that they had considered putting her under light therapy for like 12 to 24 hours. And my whole entire experience at Women Infants was beautiful, but when they told me that like I couldn't hold her for 12 to 24 hours, it was possible that I could only pick her up to feed her and do like a quick cuddle here and there, I kind of started feeling like a little overwhelmed. But I just put my faith into the doctors, into the nurses there. They were incredible, and we were kind of just doing whatever we could do to make sure that she was safe and healthy and happy. So they kept coming in to like pull her. Just realized that every time I talk for 16 minutes, my camera shuts off. I think I have a setting that after 16 minutes, it like shuts down. So apparently this video is well over 32 minutes at this point, probably closer to like 45. So let's wrap it up. But they had to like keep pulling her blood and drawing her blood to check her bilirubin, and it just kept like going higher and higher. However, homegirl here likes to eat. They were saying that newborns should do like 10 to 15 milliliters, and she was doing 40 milliliters of feed. And with feeding comes urinating and comes moving your bowels, and the more you urinate or move your bowels, the more like the jaundice comes out. I'm not a medical profession, so I can't explain to you the who's, what, where's, when's, and why's of how that happens, but she was very regular at the hospital, and that really helped us. The last time that they pulled it, they were basically like, she doesn't have to do light therapy, but you have to go to your pediatrician tomorrow, and they're gonna check her again, and they'll decide if they want you to come back. So long story short, we went to our pediatrician the very next day. We ended up staying for a little over 2 days. It was like 2 days and a couple of hours, not like 2.5 days, not 3 days, but just like a couple hours over 2 days. And then went to the pediatrician. It didn't rise, but it didn't go down. So we did have to go back to the hospital, get her blood taken again. But all in all, at the very end, her bilirubin was fine, her jaundice was fine, and she was healthy, and she didn't need any light therapy. So yeah, that is the whole labor and delivery story. I'm sure I'm missing like a ton, but scrambled eggs, there's like a lot of stuff going on right now. Our experience post-delivery in the hospital was amazing. We could only have just my husband in the room, and I loved that so hard, like so hard. The first time around, I talked about this on YouTube before, but we have very big families. Adam is from a very large Asian family, and I am from a very large Italian family, and we both have like really big friend groups. So when I tell you people were in our room multiple times an hour, to the point that we would get a call from the receptionist being like, we have somebody here to come visit you and come see your son, but there's too many people in the room and we can't let them in, so people would have to leave. It was so overwhelming, and my recovery was really tough when I had Landon, and I think that just like really also triggered a lot of my PPD and PPA. This time around, nobody could come. My parents couldn't even come. His parents couldn't even come. It was literally just Adam, myself, and Ellie, the nurses and the midwives and the pediatricians, and it was blissful. I would recommend that to anybody. First time baby, 7th time baby, I would recommend limiting the amount of people that come into your room, because having it just be Adam and I would love it if my parents could have came and his parents could have came, but I'm just so happy to have that time with just Adam, myself, and Ellie, because let's be real, it's gonna be far and few between when we actually have time with just the 3 of us anymore, and that's the way that it should be. We have a son at home, we have families at home, so that time was just so special and just so precious to me, because it was just really probably the best time of just the 3 of us bonding and understanding this new world together. So that is my whole story. Didn't go exactly how I intended it to go, but I'm really, really happy with how it went, and I wouldn't change anything for the world. So thank you guys so much for watching. If I'm like editing this and doing like the playback and I realize like I missed something important, I will try to include it as a separate clip, but I think I pretty much got the basis of this entire story. We are all recovering really, really well. We are all adjusting and transitioning really, really well. I know a lot of people asked about Landon, and he has just been a super, super big brother. We're really not like forcing Ellie onto him. If he shows interest, we want to make sure that like we of course respect that. If he doesn't show interest, we respect that as well. We're still doing like mommy Landon time for at least 10 to 15 minutes a day, daddy Landon time 10 to 15 minutes a day, so we can kind of like fill his cup, and then we make sure at least a half hour a day it's the whole family in the playroom playing or like reading books, whatever it may be. So yeah, it's been blissful so far. It's a huge difference from my first birth, and again I will link that one in the description below. It's like a full, what is it, 180, 360? It was a 360, right? It was like from how that first recovery was and that first postpartum experience was to where it is now. And I'm not getting ahead of myself because I know everything can like change at the drop of a dime, especially with newborns. But so far it has been everything that I could possibly have dreamed about and more. Emotionally, physically, mentally, I just feel so stable right now, and I feel so happy, and I'm exhausted, but I don't even care, because it's a beautiful, beautiful season of my life and of our family's life. So there we go. Thanks, Ellie, for sleeping on mama the whole time and letting me tell that story. I appreciate it. She's so stinking cute, guys. Like, honestly, I don't regret not putting her on social media, but like, she is so stinking cute. It is not even funny. I can't even just like stop staring at her. She's adorable. Anyways, I love you guys to the moon and back. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope that you're having a beautiful, beautiful day, and I look forward to talking to you all soon. Bye, friends.